Greetings, everybody. I want to welcome you to another edition of Prophecy in the News as given by Nicholas at remnantofgod.org. I figured I'm going to be bringing this the previous week's news articles that he has put on his site. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. The first is a video which he titled Words of Wisdom from a Marxist. So let's go ahead and play that now.
Some time ago, I had a conversation with a Marxist economist from China. He was coming to the end of a Fulbright fellowship here in Boston. But I asked him if he had learned anything that was surprising or unexpected. And without any hesitation, he said, yeah. I had no idea how critical religion is to the functioning of democracy. The reason why democracy works, he said, is not because the government was designed to oversee what everybody does, but rather democracy works because most people, most of the time, voluntarily choose to obey the law. And in your past, most Americans attended a church or a synagogue every week, and they were taught there by people who they respected. My friend went on to say that Americans followed these rules because they had come to believe that they weren't just accountable to society, they were accountable to God. My Chinese friend heightened a vague but nagging concern I've harbored inside that as religion loses its influence over the lives of Americans, what will happen to our democracy? Where are the institutions that are going to teach the next generation of Americans that they too need to voluntarily choose to obey the laws? Because if you take away religion, you can't hire enough police.
So, quote, a Marxist economist from China was coming to the end of a Fulbright fellowship in Boston when Professor Clayton Christensen from the Harvard Business School asked the Chinese economist if he had learned anything that was surprising or unexpected. The answer blew me away. The video is not what you would expect. I originally found the video on another website with a different title, one I used above. But I opted not to use that link because the page it was on had some other videos that were way off topic and literally took away from the importance of what this video is really all about. The video is very short and to the point, minute 39 in length, just so you know. It's not about an articulate Marxist promoting his Marxist ways. It's about a Marxist that was living in the USA for a while as his studies required. What he says is very profound and needs to be heard, in that it's the view of someone looking on that can see what many of us in the USA can't see, being in the middle of it all. Have you ever known a person who was in a relationship with someone that everyone else around them knew was wrong to be in? Because of fleshly infatuation, that person you're trying to warn can't see what everyone else sees. Well, the American people are just as blinded as that infatuated person, and that because of all the so-called perks of being in this so-called land of the free and home of the brave, with all the entertaining of the sports, Hollywood, music industry, unjust laws that legalize all sorts of sinful decadence, and a weakened religious system wherein preacher-tainers teach churchianity and never the truth as it is written. Most Americans can't possibly see what this Marxist can see standing outside looking in. Some trapped in Marxism, socialism, communism, or Islam look at America's long-lost supposed image and see the freedoms they crave in their crippling societies. In their world, religion is only legal as Rome dictates, which can be controlled by the government so as to assure things go as the leaders bowing to the Pope prefer. America used to be a place of freedom wherein God was first and foremost in our lives. And because he was first, the leaders in the nation had a fairly easy job at governing the people because most citizens obeyed due to their religious convictions. Today, we have the highest prison population on the planet. China has over 3 times as many citizens as we do, yet we have over 500,000 more prisoners than they have. Land of the free? Not likely. As was prophesied, America was to be taken over by those that hate the Christian God of the Bible, who would then take advantage of this great nation so as to garner more souls into hellfire for their dying God from hell. Thanks to all the creature comforts of home, Americans have become just what every nation on earth tried to warn them of becoming. oppressed subjects under a socialistic state. No, our leaders deny that whenever asked to respond, but when the final shoe drops, they will openly admit it, just as they are now admitting to being in agreement with Hitler's Rome's New World Order. Kind of like how he did that. It's basically like Hitler's Rome's New World Order, of which only a few years ago all of them denied and some adamantly spoke against. So, step back a few paces. With all we see happening out there, do you see what you're supposed to see? If not, and the sports, movies, video games, and lust of the flesh entice you way too much, then only those that truly do obey the Lord will be able to see the prophecy fulfilled, wherein soon there will be the very few Christians who love the Lord. Yes, many will still claim to honor him and call him Lord, but as the prophet Isaiah predicted long ago, they will only claim the name Christian to take away their shame. See Isaiah 4:1. Now that God has been removed from the schools, society, and the minds of nearly all Americans, America is doomed. But then that's exactly what was prophesied. It truly has become, as Ezekiel 7:23 said it would be, quote, "For the land is full of bloody crimes, and the city is full of violence. Because no one obeys the laws of the land anymore, because most have no idea of morality, and how it fosters peace and happiness in every nation that embraces God. And you know what? They're seeking to destroy America so as to build a socialist society, planned it that way on day one. But then they were only following orders of a dying God. For it is written in Ephesians 6:12-13, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand." Not to worry, their plans will succeed, but only for a ridiculously short period of time. For it is written in Revelation 17:12, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." And yes, that is why my NWO page link is called Revelation 17:12. Maranatha. Next article is another video, Catholics seeking presidency on the rise.
It's going to be a Catholic year for candidates running for the presidency, so it's historic.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a piece of coal. This is where my American story started.
There has never been an election with as many Catholics running as this year. Never. I mean, historically, there's been a gradual increase in the number of Catholic candidates for the office. But 2016, I can't remember an election with as many candidates. Hard charging this early on. The history of Catholics relative to the presidency of the United States is an interesting one. But the first presidential candidate, of course, was Al Smith in the 30s. And by all accounts, Smith lost because he was a Catholic. I mean, this was a moment for a Democratic candidate, but Smith was unable, in a sense, to cross denominational lines with political appeal. And really, that continued up into the 60s. And John Kennedy experienced tremendous backlash against his Catholic faith in the 1960 campaign. But Kennedy, in a sense, also broke through. And so after Kennedy, somehow the drag that being Catholic used to be on national candidates was no longer there. And after Kennedy, a slew of Catholic candidates for the national stage started to step up. And it's gradually, since then, improved and improved and improved. In fact, it's improved in a lot of different ways. I mean, all three of the major branches of our government have extraordinarily high Catholic representation. There's been a gradual increase over time, evident in all aspects of American national political life, of Catholics being more and more accepted. Yeah, so 2016 is going to be the crowning glory, in a sense, at least for those of us who study Catholicism and American national politics, because in 2016, among the presidential candidates, I think we're going to see that at least half and possibly more than half of the candidates will be Roman Catholics.
Okay, that's very interesting to say the least. So, again, from the video, the 2016 U.S. presidential cycle will include a record number of Catholic candidates. Catholics who have declared their candidacy include Florida Republican San Marco Rubio, former Maryland Democratic Governor Martin O'Malley, former Pennsylvania Republican Senator Rick Santorum, and former New York Republican Governor George Pataki. Catholics who have expressed an interest in running include former Florida Republican Governor Jeb Bush, which it is confirmed that he is running, New Jersey Republican Governor Chris Christie, Louisiana Republican Governor Bobby Jindal, Democratic Vice President Joe Biden, former Montana Democratic Governor Brian Schweitzer, New York Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo, Iowa Republican Representative Steve King, and New York Republican Representative Pete King. I want to back up to Joe Biden, as he is the current Vice President of the United States, and yes, he is Roman Catholic. Now, I'm pretty sure you've heard the phrase that really it's not the president that calls the shots, but it's the vice president behind the scenes that dictates the order of events to which the president actually filters through to the people. Okay, pretty sure you've heard that before. But anyways, let's go on. We also see 6 out of 9 of the Supreme Court justices are in fact Roman Catholic, and the majority of the Congress is Catholic, either by denomination or by agreement with Vatican agendas. Why is this happening? Besides the fact that Christian prophecy will be fulfilled, Catholic leaders are infamously known for their loyalty to Mother Rome, and that entails killing for her whenever she commands. Seeing how the Vatican is prophesied to openly kill Christians once again, as they have already begun behind closed doors by using Islam, but in order to have the ability to stand before the masses as the authority when it comes to such bold decisions as this, they must have a majority of Herods in the political arena. They already have this in most nations all over the world, and they most assuredly have a well-rooted foundation of corruption in the USA. That being said, now do you see why they had the demonic confidence to say the things they said a few decades ago? What did they say? Well, let's go ahead and read it. From Father Hecker, Catholic World, July 1870, quote, "There is, ere long, to be a state religion in this country, and that state religion is to be the Roman Catholic. First, the Roman Catholic is to wield his vote for the purpose of securing Catholic ascendancy in this country. Second, all legislation must be governed by the will of God, unerringly indicated by the Pope. Third, education must be controlled by Catholic authorities. And under education, the opinions of the individual and the utterances of the press are included, and many opinions are to be forbidden by the secular arm under the authority of the Church, even to war and bloodshed." From Brownson's Review, May 1864, "Undoubtedly it is the intention of the Pope to possess this country. In this intention he is aided by the Jesuits and all the Catholic prelates and priests." From Tamburini, General of the Jesuits, quote, "See, sir, from this chamber I govern not only to Paris, but to China, not only to China, but to all the world, without anyone knowing how I do it," end quote. Issued in 1864, Section 6, Errors about Civil Society Considered Both in Itself and in Its Relation to the Church, number 55, Pope Pius IX, the Syllabus of Errors. Quote, "It is error to believe that the Church ought to be separated from the State, and the State from the Church," obviously going directly against what the Bible says. All you gotta do is look at the example of the coin. You know, when the Pharisees showed Jesus, the coin, he says, "Are we ought to pay taxes?" And he says, "Whose face is on this coin?" The Pharisee said, "Caesar's. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." Obviously, that is a little indication of church and state separation. Okay. What does that also mean? It means that Christians, Bible-believing Christians, really ought to keep away from the aspect of the political arena. Alright? Because by doing so, then they incorporate church and state. And yes, we had a separation of church and church of state in this country, but ever since 2006, under President Bush, when he invoked the 501c3 corporate tax exempt status that all the churches must comply to, and if they don't, meaning they can only preach politically correct type sermons or politically correct type agendas, and if they don't abide by that, they get their status yanked from them, and they are no longer a church. So obviously, what does that mean? Well, that basically dictates that the government is their creator, and that the government is their God. So that also means that there is a unification of church and state. Just because the Constitution says freedom of religion doesn't mean it's enacted today. Pope Pius IX again, the Syllabus of Errors, issued 1864, Section 6, Errors about Civil Society, considered it both in itself and in its relation to the Church, number 54. Quote, it is error to believe that kings and princes are not only exempt from the jurisdiction of the Church, but are superior to the Church in deciding questions of jurisdictions. Okay, so it's an error to believe that. From the same document, quote, it is error to believe that in the case of conflicting laws enacted by the two powers, church and civil, the civil law prevails, end quote. Bronson's Review, quote, democracy is a mischievous dream where the Catholic Church does not predominate, end quote. The Catholic World, here we come more recent now, 1937. There is one and only one sure democracy, and that's the Catholicism of the popes, end quote. Okay, you think this is just all hogwash? Father F.X. Talbot, editor of America, official Jesuit magazine for the U.S. Statement in New York Globe, December 14, 1930, quote, the old Protestant culture is about at the end of its rope. Why can't we make the U.S. Catholic in legislation, Catholics in justice, aims, and ideals? Bishop O'Connor of Pittsburgh, quote, religious liberty is merely endured until the opposite can be carried into effect without peril to the Catholic Church, end quote. Here's another one, quote, if Catholics ever gain sufficient numerical majority in this country, religious freedom is at an end, so our enemies say, so we believe. From the Shepherd of the Valley, Journal of the late Bishop of St. Louis. Okay, here we are 60 years ago on the Register, January 23rd. In the book Confusion Twice Confounded, Monsignor Joseph H. Brady states that the U.S. Supreme Court is wrong in decisions regarding separation of church and state. He says a sound view of the Constitution in its relation to religion probably awaits a change in personnel in our highest tribunal, end quote. The State and the Church, page 38 and 39, by Miller and Ryan. Imprimatur of Cardinal Hayes, quote, but constitutions can be changed, and non-Catholic sects may decline to such a point that the political prescription, ban of them, may become feasible and expedient. What protection would they have against a Catholic state? End quote. The Catholic Church in this nation must live to accomplish her work, even though our Republican form of government disappears, quote unquote. The Catholic World, April 1935, page 12. Encyclical of Leo XIII, quote, they, Catholics, must penetrate wherever possible in the administration of civil affairs. All Catholics should do all in their power to cause the constitution of states and legislations to be modeled on the principles of the true Church. New Catholic Encyclopedia, Arts, Inquisition, Auto da Fe, and Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Day. Quote, under the influence of Germanic customs and concepts, torture was little used from the 9th to the 12th century. But with the revival of the Roman law, the practice was reestablished in the 12th century. In 1252, Pope Innocent IV sanctioned the infliction of torture by the civil authorities upon heretics, and torture came to have a recognized place in the procedure of the inquisitional courts. And we have recently had torture of, all you gotta do is just look back in the Japanese internment camps here in the U.S. What did George Bush say regarding the whole 9/11 thing and going after these terrorists? You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And yes, he did include torture in that. Okay? And heretics is just a terrorist is just a new word for heretics. That's all it is. The encyclical of Pope Pius X, issued in 1864, asserted the right to require the state not to leave any man free to profess his own religion, the right to employ force, the right to claim dominion in temporal things, the right to have the entire control of public schools, the right to hold princes and kings in subjection, the right to treat all marriages as invalid which are not solemnized according to the forms of the Council of Trent, the right to prevent the state granting to immigrants the public exercise of their own worship, and the right to require the state not permit free expression of opinion. That is from the encyclical of Pope Pius X, issued in 1864. Lafayette said it best when he said, quote, "If the liberties of the American people are ever destroyed, they will fall by the hand of the Catholic clergy," end quote, from Lafayette. Okay, so now obviously you can kind of see why Obama was put in office to set the stage for quite possibly the final events, because obviously he is, it is well documented that he is practices the Islamic faith, which is controlled by the Roman Catholic Church, and so therefore, since he's done his job, now the real beast will show his teeth, so to speak. Next article. This is another video in which, again, you'll have the links provided to these articles, in which you can click on the video. I'm not going to play this video, but I'm just going to read a quote from the video. Quote, "The Supreme Court of the United States is not the final authority, nor is the culture itself," declared Ronnie Floyd, the elected leader of the nation's largest Protestant denomination. "The Bible is God's final authority about marriage, and on this book we stand." Dr. Floyd's powerful and provocative comments were met with thunderous applause and standing ovations from thousands of Southern Baptist messengers meeting in Columbus, Ohio. End quote. And now you're going to see the lukewarm fruits of this declaration. Problem with that statement is Dr. Floyd's not really telling the truth. Wait, what? See, if the Southern Baptists are declaring the Bible as being their final say, then I need to ask them where in that Bible they find Sunday Sabbath, secret rapture, once saved, always saved, or even eternal life and hellfire for that matter. And that's just the tip of the lukewarm iceberg, drifting all throughout the Southern Baptist Convention as well as all so-called Protestant denominations. Yes, I am fully aware that many churches out there don't agree with same-sex marriage, but I am also aware there are many that do. The fact the Baptist Church, who claims they will deny the powers that be and stand on the Bible, is no doubt going to be first in line to cave when their prophesied tax-free status is threatened. The fact they ignore the Bible and the words of Jesus himself when he proclaimed joining your church with the state was sinful confirms they will most assuredly cave. And even if they drag their feet towards caving in, the U.S. government already knows the majority of the churches are completely okay with homosexual marriage. All I see them doing with the foot dragging and back and forth in the federal courts is nothing more than an expected stalling of their already made decisions so as to make sure the demographics show they have the majority of the people in agreement with homosexual marriage. When they are assured of that fact, they will have all the tools in place to combat the naysayers. In any event, it's going to be an interesting media event when the Baptists start to play it up. Or, and this is the scenario all church leaders in every denomination before them have done. Once approached behind closed doors by the powers that be, who then show them the fine print of signing into the 501c3, their knees will start to knock together. Tears or fear will flow from their eyes when they hear the United States officials are threatening to remove their tax-free status, which includes excise and penalties based on how long they had the 501c3, and then, as their cohorts in apostasy have done so many times before them, they will bow and worship to the almighty dollar they have grown to love and trust. That was from June 18th, 2015. Next article. Pope slammed as scary out there on genuine faith. This is very interesting. A man of religion, the vicar of Christ, seems to have fallen in with the communist way of doing things, Limbaugh said on his national broadcast Wednesday. Controlling mankind through command and control governments backed by police or military power. This is what the Pope is essentially calling for. The problem is, human beings suffer under collectivist or communist regimes. They do not prosper. That's the history of the world. The history of humanity is tyranny, and the people who live in tyranny do not prosper by definition. The pontiff said, if Christians don't dig deep and generously open up their wallets, they do not have genuine faith. I've not heard this before, said Limbaugh of the Pope's comments, so people's faith in God, religious faith is now, according to the Vicar of Christ, directly related to how wide open their wallets are. Limbaugh explained that every bit of the Pope's mantra is related to man-made climate change. I predicted that militant environmentalism will become the new home of communists, and it has, he said. Now the Pope seems to have fallen for this. But what Limbaugh fails to see here is, with all his knowledge, all his political insight, and all his power to decipher the right from the wrong, as it pertains to his own political definitions, he should have at least added to his library of books the Christian Bible, of which we see that not only was this prophesied regarding the Pope's bold desire for a socialist format for government, it's what historic and prophetic records has shown to be the end result of Beelzebub taking over the powers that be in any given generation so as to prevent mankind from prospering. Because we all know how easily money and power can be wielded to fog the brains of leaders to the point that they want it all no matter what it costs to the people they take it from. That is such a true statement. All you got to do is take a look at your own personal life. You go to a job. You work at a company. Okay? All you got to do is just follow the money and see how much they are willing to do in order to not lose that money. See what kind of drastic measures they are able to go to in order to maintain their power. For those that are not in Christ, that is. Finally, Mr. Limbaugh is, however, starting to see the obvious picture in all this, as I am sure many others are as well. Hence the reason for Revelation 17:16 being planned. One can only hope many more will jump on this bandwagon of common sense in the coming days. However, I do fear for Limbaugh in that if his comments do cause some to see the truth behind the present Pope's actions, one can only wonder what will happen next. Only two scenarios are possible here. Limbaugh is approached by the bloodthirsty Jesuits of Rome and then agrees to clam up, as did all the 501c3 preachers that used to expose the popes of Rome, including the SDA Church, or he stands his ground and ends up in grave danger of being killed by those Jesuits who admit in writing is their duty to the Pope, who now happens to be a Jesuit himself. In any event, two things need to be seriously considered here. Number one, we need to pray for Rush Limbaugh, that the Lord keeps him safe from Rome. And number two, Mr. Limbaugh needs to take a few hours to peruse the articles posted on this page as soon as he can. The truth is, both things need to be done here. And Mr. Limbaugh, if you get wind of this post, and you finally check into the articles on that page I have linked out above, you will find that the Pope did not fall for this communist militant environmentalism as you assume. His predecessors invented it. He is merely running with it. And here is a video of global warming to bring global government. This was a sermon that was delivered on Sabbath, June 13th, 2015. It's a very good video. It goes into really good detail about the Copenhagen Treaty, the plagues of Revelation, climate change, global warming, and all the fiasco behind that, including the encyclical that the Pope just released and all of these types of things. So I'm not going to go ahead and read this, but I will read the last sentence here. It is now God's obedient remnant will echo Psalms 119, 125 through 126 that says, I am thy servant. Give me understanding that I may know thy testimonies. It is time for thee, Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law. So much for that whole law being done away with thing, huh? Including the Sabbath day? Okay. From June 21st. Pastor faces prosecution for anti-Islam rant. Quote, a 79-year-old Northern Ireland pastor is facing persecution, and again, I need to stress this, that you can click on the links that are posted on the headline, and it'll take you right to the article, as well as all the additional articles he posts with all of these events going on. So don't just watch this video. Click on the link, remnantofgod.org. Look at all the other articles. Click on the links from the articles. Do your own research. And come to your own conclusions. Take everything to God in prayer and have Him help you. Okay? That's what He's there for. You know? We all got His number. All we have to do is ask. Pastor faces prosecution for anti-Islam rant. Quote, a 79-year-old Northern Ireland pastor is facing prosecution for calling the Muslim religion satanic and saying Islam was a brainchild of demonic forces in hell. Pastor James McConnell of the Whitewell Metropolitan Tabernacle in Belfast delivered the fiery sermons in May. They're coming to light once again because authorities have just determined that they're controversial enough to warrant a court hearing, end quote. You know where this is headed, don't you? Everyone that understands basic Christian truths knows Islam is extremely evil, and they also know the false pastors, preachers, and priests that promote it in all their churches are working directly with Rome so as to bring about a scenario prophecy predicts for our day wherein Sharia law is a must. Yes, this includes the SDA church. First and foremost, free speech will eventually be pulled from the pulpit because anyone using the Bible to declare truth will become dangerous when it comes to political correctness. In fact, do you recall the 2 newsletters I did on this very fact? And here they are. Truth Provide newsletter September 2nd, 1999. Vatican declared scriptures dangerous. And Truth Provide newsletter July 18th, 2001. Speaking against Vatican equals danger. I might do a separate video later on this week reading these 2 newsletters so as to get you guys up to speed. I gotta hurry up and try to get this done because we got a nasty storm coming. The false preachers of today that promote Islam know that eventually the powers that be will pass laws making it illegal to declare scriptural facts regarding how evil Islam really is. So who will benefit? Well, most will assume Islam, right? But they won't benefit nearly as much as Rome. After all, Rome invented the religion of Islam, and being as such, they can easily dispose of it as well. However, I doubt that will happen 100%. They need to have someone willingly manning those 30,000 plus guillotines in America, do they not? And even if a Muslim doesn't man the blade, the laws of the land will emulate Sharia law so as to have the legal right to drop the blade on Christians in the first place. What most fail to see here is Rome's ecumenical queen doesn't only appeal to the Muslim people as well, speaking of Mary, the Queen of Heaven, or Isis, or Semiramis, as the masses in a spiritual group hug. Rome is a church and state, just as prophecy predicted they would be. They will appeal to the religious leaders that already bow to the Pope. Yes, but they must also appeal to the political leaders if their ecumenicalism is to be true to its written form via the Vatican II Council. So how will Rome benefit? When they finally pass laws that declare you cannot expose the evils of Islam using the Bible, and they will do this because we already see Christians being jailed, persecuted, and financially bankrupted for declaring Rome's true fruit of homosexuality is a sin. You will then see all so-called religions protected by the government. But that won't last forever, as they will eventually have to come up with a government-approved one-world religion that makes everyone happy so as to prevent problems between religions. Seeing how Rome already started the one-world church on June 26, 2000, the Vatican will have, and again, this is highlighted, you can go and click on this link itself and read it for yourself, the Vatican will have to have someone step up with a hell-inspired, wonderful way of dropping the other ecumenical shoe that causes everyone to have their enlightened moment that fosters the thought, seated by hell, of course, that we really can all get along in a way that makes every ecstatically happy. Okay? And that is the whole aspect of what this climate change thing is doing. That is what the whole aspect of these 17 goals of the End Poverty 2015, that is the whole aspect of the redistribution of wealth, common good for all, for the good of the planet. This is the whole aspect of that encyclical that was released. So, moving on, they also know that the remnant of her seed will never go for that idea because of it's what we have been preaching they're planning to do for decades. When their plan comes to fruition, we, the remnant people, will stick out like sore thumbs and appear to them as easy targets. Will it be that easy for them? Well, as in all wars, some soldiers will die on the battlefield, yes. But if you're an obedient child of God, you know all too well that David wasn't easy to target when he ran towards a well-fortified Goliath that day. Even though they believed they defeated Daniel when he was tossed in the lion's den, the truth came forth that they failed in a big way that actually cost them their lives. When Shadrach and his friends were tossed in the furnace, an entire nation saw God glorified, just as those that were standing nearby. When the Vatican burned Christians at the stake during their prophesied 1,260-year reign saw the glory of God, and Haman, who built the gallows to hang Mordecai on, was actually the one that hung on those gallows. In short, we have all sorts of factual, historical, and biblical evidence, not to mention prophecy, that says even though they win their minuscule battles here and there, Christ has already won the war. And so therefore, God has not given us a spirit of fear. So escapist people, people that believe in rapture, why are you so afraid of persecution? Why are you so afraid of this? If you truly believe in the God of the Bible like you say you would put your entire faith in him, and you would not be afraid of the calamities to come to pass. Because you will acknowledge Psalms 91, that even though 1,000 will fall on thy left, 10,000 on the right, it will not come nigh thee. And if so happen that you end up becoming a martyr through the will of God, then you know what? Your reward will be great. Last article, Comfortable Christianity Over, Conference Told. Quote, the days of comfortable Christianity are over, Brian Brown of the National Organization for Marriage warned. The theme of the conference was, what you thought was coming is here and now, and confronted head on several hot-button topics that WorldNet Daily has reported on, including the possible legalization of the same-sex marriage and Muslim immigrants coming to America. The meeting consisted of a lineup of speakers including former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, Star Parker, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford, by the way, all are Catholics, Tony Perkins, Frank Gaffney Jr., former Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy Matt Staver, and I'm pretty sure some of them are also Jesuits, founder of Liberty Counsel Ted Beyer, editor of Movie Guide, and many others. In a matter of days, the Supreme Court will be issuing a controversial ruling on whether to overturn millennia of human history and declare homosexual marriage to be a right. Okay, they're going to go along with this, regardless of different states saying, oh, they haven't approved it yet, and it's going to be approved. Okay, this whole thing that the states have their own independent form of governing is a farce. It's a lie. Okay. The federal government and the Supreme Court says jump, the states say how high. Okay. So if they prove homosexual marriage to be right, which chances are more likely they will, regardless of what each individual state says, it's going to be legal. Period. A lot of people like to have this mindset that the states. Secession of the states. There isn't going to be no secession of the states. In a matter of days, the Supreme Court will be issuing a controversial ruling on whether to overturn millennia of human history and declare homosexual marriage to be a right. Tensions are running high on both sides as many expect the court to side with the radical homosexual agenda, thus forcing Christians to choose whether to hold to biblical morality and engage in civil disobedience. Because that's what this will be. If you hold to biblical morality, then you would be engaging in civil disobedience, or face the possibility of losing their tax-exempt status and right to disagree with the gay agenda. That is exactly from this article here. And it will be posted in the description box below. So, are you ready? Are you sure? Need I say more? This is going to end this week's broadcast of Prophecy in the News. A little shorter this time. But there's a wealth of information, way more than what I just read here. Okay, I just read the written articles that he shared, basically the top headlines. But there are also more important headlines here listed after each day, because he usually puts up one article a day, and there's all these you can go and check, okay, or just read the headlines, for each day. And again, make sure you check out this global warming to bring global government. Okay, I will post a link to the videos as well as all videos, and including the main website, remnantofgod.org, so you can click on this site and follow along with me. And again, kudos to Nicholas at remnantofgod.org for working very hard in these times to bring you the truth as far as prophecy in the news and how it's unfolding before our eyes. One cannot be taken away from the fact of all the animal die-offs too, which is still going on. And I think I'm going to have to do a little short video of that just to show you that it's still going on, because that has also become hush-hush since 2010. After the events of BB Arkansas and these types of things. So again, I'm glad you were able to sit through this with me, and until next time, truth be told, truth be known, stay safe, and God bless. See you next time. Bye-bye.